has. But we need to know where we're going to be playing in this match in order to fully flesh out who's most likely to win. So we'll go through that ban phase and see where we end up.
Theme Park is in the map rotation, and we might end up going there. We'll take a look. There's only 2 left. No, yet again, Theme Park is the last banned map. We've been debated a second time in a row. Our very first matchup of Tempo Storm versus Evil Geniuses had the same outcome, with Theme Park coming just so close. But first map was Border. We're going to go to Villa this time around. This is a good map for both teams, but it's definitely a standout for TSM. A lot of teams banning Villa against TSM because it tends to be, statistically, one of their strongest maps.
Yeah, and I think that Theme Park coming in here as a curveball is going to upset that ban phase ever so slightly. You can see that DZ left it to the very last moment. No team is wanting to ban Theme Park because it changes the way your ban phase plays out in its entirety. I mean, think about it. It's just been introduced. People aren't sure who's comfortable on it yet. And so there are people who are obviously going to try and hide that they're comfortable on that map. There are people that are going to teams that are going to try and avoid it altogether because they aren't comfortable on that map. And at the beginning of its existence in Pro League, it is going to be a very different kind of map in that ban phase. So we get Villa instead, and this will surely be an interesting map to see played out for both of these squads. It is the most played map for DarkZero since December, and they actually have won it 4 of the 5 times they've played it in recent history. So who do you guys think is going to win? Who's going to take this one?
We'll wait and see. Unsurprising that TSM is by far and away the favorite, 72 to 23%, with 5% of you thinking that there would be a draw. Now, if you go back to the last time these two teams quarreled, we're having an exact mirror match of our very final play day in January. At the end of January, right before the 6th Invitational, these two teams met in one of the last matches of that play day and one of the last matches of Pro League, and TSM actually crushed DarkZero. It wasn't close at all. It was 7-2 in favor of TSM, and it would be foreshadowing for the beating that TSM would give to an awful lot of teams on their run through the 6th Invitational. Now, DarkZero is a very methodical team. If there's any team in North America that I think can lose to TSM and manage to do their homework to turn it around, DarkZero is absolutely among those, if not the number 1 contender for that title. So in Villa, a map that is good for both teams, do you think DarkZero is going to have what it takes to be able to draw even with TSM after the shellacking they took 2 months ago?
So, you brought it up. DZ is a very methodical team, and I think that can work for them. It can also work against them. TSM's not a random team. They have thought put into everything that they do. We're going to load into the match, and I'll continue talking about what I'm talking about here, but we actually will get this all started. Villa and DZ will be starting on attack, TSM on defense. DZ being a methodical team, being a team that tends to plan things out, tends to, try and track their opponent's methods or what they do typically, whether it's on the roam or on an individual level, whatever, all the different little things, they try to find all those. TSM has the ability to just throw left hooks, to throw punches that are going to go completely unread by DZ, and just to win gunfights and heads-up engagements as well. That's another thing that we have to keep in mind. I think when TSM fought against DarkZero the last time and they had that 7-2, a big part of it was just because DZ were not showing up to their gunfights. TSM looked absolutely on point. And there is one thing that I think TSM holds above most teams, especially in North America. It's their ability to do things in unison. They have an eerie, almost, ability to just be on the same page all the time when it comes to their execution.
Yeah, absolutely. These are teams that are both very well calculated, though DarkZero doesn't have that same aggressive streak that I would say that TSM has. A lot of people like to refer to TSM's patented formula as being the trident, where it was achieved Merc and Bolo as the 3 prongs or the 3 tines of that spear, with Geo and Pojo Man holding the staff on that trident. Now, when you look at this team, that's not quite the case anymore, because Geo has now picked up a 4th part of that spear, which I think would be more akin to, I don't know, what is 4 prongs? A fork, I guess? The 4 tines? I don't really know.
I'd say maybe they're
I don't know utensils like that.
They're a well-rounded team at this point. Okay, they've gotten to a point where, and yes, it would be a Ford. they've gotten to a point where I think TSM has figured out their formula. There was a little bit of time when they had first started putting together this roster where a lot of critics were coming out and saying that they just didn't have enough support on the back end. They weren't well-rounded enough. That's too much to put on Pojo. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that TSM are in their comfort zone. And so they, and that's similar to DZ, who also had a path of, I think even for DZ, it was probably even more. They were changing around players quite a lot to find the exact formula that they were comfortable with. So all that discussed now, we actually get the first round to start playing out. It's Aviator to start for TSM. DZ look like they want to go for a study attack. They brought the Nomad for that potential flank. It's almost essential on this map. A lot of those staircases can facilitate those late flanks for the defense.
One thing I'm fascinated to watch is if there's any flexibility here on how the defense plays this. Well, Mai is still in play, and we saw him show up on border quite a lot with EG running him, though Tempo Storm opted not to go with him nor his magnets. What are we going to find here on a map like Villa? And furthermore, how much of that projectile play, how many grenades, flashbangs, etc. get hucked into the site on Villa? Villa's a map where we do see some smokes get played if there's a gridlock on the board, if there's a Jackal or a Dokkaebi on the board, if they end up showing their face. A Capitao, should he not be banned in this particular instance. But most of these teams are using their soft destruction on floors and on walls, not necessarily to try and push people out of position. And speaking of, Achieved gets just shoved to the top of main stairs, and he's being preyed upon by Hyper, who's just waiting down below.
One stun used from Hyper. Flash is coming up at the top of staircase. There's an easy kill for Hyper in a second and a third. The lineup from TSM. Hyper takes full advantage, and DarkZero in full control.
I'm no Villaologist, Michael, but that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt your chances of winning that round quite an awful lot. And well, those three prongs that we talked about, they all seem to be quite bent. They'll need to be realigned as Geo is the one left holding down the fort. Not a single bit of damage done to anybody on DarkZero. TCSG in his hands to walk up towards that classical hallway door. Barbed wire in front of him. Down goes a frag grenade. It's overshot. And how about a flawless round for DarkZero? Very well done. And Skies, what a beautiful charm on that gun. Absolutely gorgeous, if I do say so myself.
I like that charm. Parker, where do you get that charm? I
don't know. I don't know, Michael. I don't know.
I think. Well, you know, it's a beautiful looking
we can
charm.
talk about it. We can talk about it later.
Definitely a huge fan. Now, that was hopefully for TSM's sake, that was a bit of a one-off. I don't think that they're all going to be lining up quite like they just did anymore, at least. Good job to Hyper taking full control there. He didn't stop shooting on the same angle. Good transfers. Props to him, but really it was TSM handing that one to DZ on a silver platter. They're going to go to Aviator once more, try and change things up, try and be a little bit more successful in that hold. I'm guessing that they might put more emphasis on the roam downstairs, because the reason Hyper was allowed to get into that position was there was no one from TSM roaming by library, by piano, by anywhere that's going to stop Hyper from getting to that staircase, that main staircase. It's either that or TSM's just not going to hold the top of the main staircase. And both are options. They could get more passive. They could actually have a roamer by library. Whatever the case be, they just need to make sure if they're going to be putting so much pressure onto that top main position that they're actually supporting it with a roam underneath.
You don't really get those many opportunities like Hyper got, where you can just capitalize off such painfully obvious mistakes that were committed by TSM there. And the thing with the way TSM pushed was they were expecting a joint take from DZ onto the stairs as well as over into the study, but there was nobody who bothered to give it to them. It was just Hyper all alone.
Yep. I mean, Hyper all alone, he did pretty well with it. It's just the nature of the angle that really hurts TSM so much. Guy's going to be opening up the door into Art. Now with art control and piano control, that again is going to allow DZ to take top main. And it looks like TSM has fallen off of top main. No. They've still got somebody there. Just the one. They have to be careful not to overinvest like they did last round.
No, it'll be skies to prey upon that should somebody opt to do that, but no, they're not giving them an inch this time around. Though Merc is going to take a beating. Quite a lot, just down below 50 HP, and there's no dock on the board, as we'd noted before, so nobody's going to be able to get Merc back up to full HP. He's just going to try to ride it out over by 90. I don't know where that exact altercation came from, but he just needs to simply wait. Spraying through the floor, but most of the bullets being absorbed by those metal beams, as Skies doesn't do a single point of damage to anybody on TSM. Instead out comes the frag grenade, but he's a little too late. Eclipse the opening pick. Down goes Bolo. The Goyo removed from action, and you've got about half the round left to play with if you're DZ.
Oh, that Goyo is going to slow things down. The fire will last enough time to delay the push. Over by 90, you can see Eclipse trying to get his second kill. He's incurred a little bit of damage, and there's the follow-up from Achieved. Pushing out of sight and securing the flank of TSM. DZ now in a much more precarious situation, now that they've lost their flanking operator.
Ooh, patience here and a little bit of calm before what is inevitably going to be the storm. Down goes Skies, that's the TCSG. Bolo from above, just lobbing those shots on down, but he's managed to miss out on the Buck, who is going to bleed out on the floor unless somebody can get to him. There's plenty of time for him to be recovered, but if you're DarkZero, you've already lost Eclipse. At this point, you might just need to go for it, and that's exactly what's going to happen. DarkZero are going to leave Skies down below as he's been picked back up, never mind that. So somebody from DarkZero has been put into that position as they have control of Study and will look to head in.
They've got good control, like you said. They need to get that wall open. Not sure if the Excaros were successful, but the push is coming regardless, as there's not enough time to wait. The gas canisters are going to be integral for TSM on this hold. As they start coming out from Pojoman, he's going to do a lot of damage on this push. Achieved will get his second kill, and his third. No, that's Merc from 90, who gets his own double kill. Mint, the last attacker in sight, but he cannot plant. And there it is, the cleanup from Achieved. The 3K from him, and TSM, a much more solid round than the first.
Amazing how a round plays out differently when you don't throw 3 of your teammates into the meat grinder in the first 40 seconds. Absolutely uncanny. You don't even need to be a Reddit analyst to be able to call that strategy. So at this point, TSM were far more patient. They held 90 with nobody being able to flush out Merc, and while we saw Eclipse wander on in and take out Bolo offsite, DarkZero then repurposed their attack. They went back over to Study, which they probably should have done a little bit earlier, and I think a large part of this for DarkZero is, and you're going to hear it an awful lot, is both Mute and Mozzie being in play. Now, that previous round, there was no Mute on the board. It was just a Mozzie. But the fact that you've got those 3 pests where no drone can get by means that you need to face check it as an attacker. You need to go in blind or try to find another avenue for your drone to get into that room. Sometimes it might not seem like much, but denying a single doorway can cause teams an extra 20 to 30 seconds to reposition themselves to be able to get on in. And with a Thatcher ban, there's really no easy way to get rid of those pests, with the exception of burning an explosive to hit the doorway and hope that you take the pest out in the process.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Parker. A lot of people, when they first start watching competitive Siege, they'll not notice the effect that the Mozzie Mute combination can really have on the attackers, on their information gathering potential. And it does force the attack a lot to really just go for it. And we saw that moment happen, and in fact you called it when it was happening. DZ, they hit that moment where they had to go for it last round. And it cost them. They just didn't have enough information to go for it confidently. That's what drones are for, and that's what the Mute Mozzie is there to stop. Hyper making his way into the basement. He's going to be droned in by one of his teammates. Very helpful. And he'll be able to get some significant control, actually. Like, by Kitchen. He's wary of Astro, though, because that drop-down being opened is definitely very scary. And the door reinforced means he has to go somewhere else. So that's really well played from TSM to open the drop, reinforce the doorway, and then force anyone who comes up from the basement to take a different route.
A lot of teams have been foregoing the trophy statuary site, and it's a question that was actually asked an awful lot at the 6 Invitational here, is there hasn't really been a ton of action the first minute into round number 3. A big part of that is because the setup that you're going to find is going to be very similar, especially with the way that you hold that second floor, but you have a little bit of a buffer because nobody's going to just be breaking the doorway and walking right into the kitchen from down below. Not with the way that these teams are going to play it, and we see an awful lot of defenders utilize that second floor to their advantage by breaking open parts of the floor, hatches, etc., so they can drop down. Right now, there's a great struggle from DarkZero to try and find the position of both Geo and Merc, but Merc will fall off, and with that, TSM know that they've burned enough time. They can take the fight to DarkZero on that first floor, and they'll do just that, with Skies getting dropped from Merc, a clean shot, as you can imagine from him, and DarkZero will trail for the remainder of this round.
Looks like a little bit of damage being done to Pojo, but that's not enough to get the kill. Easy tripped up a little bit in this round. That much is clear. They have gotten some control upstairs, but what are they really doing with it is the question. With Skies being eliminated, the answer, probably not much. He was their primary soft destructor, the operator you want the most to be up in Master, opening up above this site. And with him gone, you can see Ash charges being used. And yeah, they're useful as well, but not as much as these breaching charges from Hyper or the Buck Skeleton Key would have been from Skies.
A nice view of the cams and all the information that TSM is going to have, quite a lot of it as well. If they've got a drone, that's in their pocket. They've also got the Valk cams that'll be up. They've got the cardiac sensor in the hands of Bolo, and they'll know where everybody from DarkZero is coming from, so you got to bring the fight to them. It's a bit of a delayed opportunity for the Valkyrie to push up, and Geo gets traded off, and DarkZero are just being able to feast upon TSM. But there's Merc still just sitting, waiting patiently. He'll gun down one with Bolo getting in on the action, leaving Hyper in a 1v3, but nobody's getting past achieved. He's holding a wonky angle that you don't see all that often, just waiting ever so patiently, and you can hear him coming from a mile away. TSM will take their second round in a row, and with it, the lead here in the match.
Great job there to TSM holding out on Kitchen. Now, you noted how Trophy is a site that is seeing less and less play, and it's definitely true. Kitchen coming forward. And so is Living Room as well, as a site that some teams will select, not TSM in this case. But TSM find themselves on Trophy yet again. They're going to stay, I guess, in the typical. Some teams, will do the Living Room, but not here. That last round was, I think, a decent execution from DZ, but mostly I'd say that they suffered from being a little all over the place. I don't say that often, but I think that they were tripped up by the way that TSM was holding. TSM had a roam upstairs and a roam downstairs. DZ tried to clear the top four, were mostly successful. And then when they transitioned to start pressuring the site, I don't think DZ were expecting there to be so many roamers horizontally. Merc, for example, playing by bike. I just don't think that DZ expected that. When you got the Mute Mozzie combo as well, it seemed like DZ just were very slow on the information gathering. And that's probably the culprit right there. That's probably why DZ were lacking in information. They just weren't able to drone all the things they wanted to.
A very common story that we are going to hear an awful lot of with Musi. See, I want it. Musi would actually be a great way of calling Mute Mozzie, but there's already a player named Musi. It's so. Yeah. We are still struggling to this Mutant Mozzie duo. I want to call it Musi, but we can't. There's already a guy. But anyway, this is a common story that we are going to hear time and time again. As long as the Mutant Mozzie duo is going to rain terror down upon these attackers, and now you've added even greater denial, this time from your utility denial, and that's going to be Wamai working in tandem with Jaeger. And at that point, there are 11 throwables and projectiles when Wamai is at full strength that you can take care of. That is an absurd amount that the attackers will have to just simply work through, or possibly just even ignore and hope for the best. It's going to give greater prominence to an operator like Zofia, whose pick rate is already sky high. So, trophy statuary defense, though, I would imagine we are going to see very little offsite presence, maybe somebody downstairs for TSM, but overall they're just going to hold down the fort. Maybe have somebody inside a Master or playing near Master on that wall. No breach denial, so you can get from Master bedroom right into the site quite easily. And I would imagine that DarkZero will understand that. Even though they've been running the Hibana this whole time, a Thermite could be particularly effective in this instance.
So they've got the platform they need to attack. DarkZero have control of top red and pretty much the entirety of the south side of the top floor. They need to actually start getting some pit. Plenty of time for DZ to make that happen, but they might run out of that time if they continue to loiter. C4 missing there for TSM. Not sure exactly where that one went, but we know it was a miss. There's no damage done to DZ from that C4 at least. Merc still on the roam downstairs. Hyper at the top of red, just trying to apply pressure to Statuary. Lifeline comes out to assist him in that endeavor. Some more explosives going off. Again, we're not sure exactly where that's happening. We do know is no casualties, despite us getting to the last about 40 seconds of the round.
This is insane, and there's going to be an absolute brawl between these teams. We'll see who will come out ahead. This is a great strategy by Achieved, and he wins one with the MP5. He'll pop up and look for a second, but there's nobody there. That's your opening frag with 1/6 of this round left. Merc gets in on the action, and a great crossfire. That is held. A long angle from Hyper as he's daring somebody to rotate out of Master. Could it come? Bolo puts that UMP to good use. Finds two, though one of which happens to be his own teammate. Hot and cold off Repel, takes out Achieved. And just like that, this round is very winnable for DarkZero. Pojo Man and Bolo just left alive to deal with Hyper and Hot and Cold. Two great shots from DZ. They lack information, but now TSM lacks Pojo Man, and Bolo will need to clutch. With the UMP in hand, he's gonna have to stop this plant in its tracks. He guns down Hot and Cold, his position given away. Diffuser goes down successfully, and Hyper will have the angle on it. Bolo flicks around the corner, but the UMP is just not good enough. Hyper's better, and that will be the round for DarkZero, who'll equalize. They pick up round number 2, and will tie things up through 4 rounds.
Okay, so first, right off the bat, I just want to say that was a really cool strategy from TSM. Did you see that the way that they set up in Master, utilized Closet, opened up their triple wall, opened up the office or the closet wall to get long angles onto Statuary. They hard stopped the clear in from Aviator in the trophy door because that's an easy bottleneck. Anyone can hold that. The whole strategy there for TSM was really unique. And I am super glad that they brought it out. I'm super glad I got to see that because it's always fun to see new things like that. So props to TSM for that. Also, what the heck were they doing? They were up, what was it, 4-2, Parker? And then suddenly they start peeking things. Like the master window in a 4-2, you don't need to do that. You don't need to be going for that. That's just entirely unnecessary. They basically handed the chance back to DZ. And DZ, being DZ, they said, oh, thank you very much. Yes, I will take that. Okay. A great recovery there from DarkZero. TSM, a beautiful strategy. A wonderful setup. I absolutely love that, and I hope I get to see it more. And actually a good execution of that strategy as well. But as soon as they got into a winning position, they got a little too aggressive, lost 2 members completely unnecessarily, and, well, the round slipped away. So now we go to an even round count.
And back we go, over onto a very familiar side of the map, but to a new site, which will be down below, and what appears to be Living Room Library. We haven't seen that one in, well, yet. So if my eyes are correct, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like we've now got a full rotation for TSM on all 4 of the sites.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and that's really cool to see. Again, Living Room Library, an uncommon bomb site, the least common bomb site, but actually a typically successful site if the stats are correct in my head. It's been a while since I've seen them, but last I checked, people tend to win on defense at this site. That's, of course, pinch of salt on that one because it's not played very often, so there's not a lot of stats to really look at.
Yeah, it's... How many times do we see one of those sites where it's like, oh, the win rate's like 74%, and you realize that teams play it like 3 times this season?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh, okay.
This is one of those sites, for sure.
And before somebody corrects me, and they're like, 73% doesn't make sense if they only play it 3 times. And it's like, oh, be quiet. It's an example.
Silence, Reddit analyst. So, a little bit of information now here from TSM. And as you can see on the left side of your screen, the drone economy is starting to suffer for DZ. Of course, those mute jammers and Mozzie Pest is also going to assist in that. TSM doing once again a great job at denying information. Easy still trying to clear out the top floor. A reminder that this is a living room library defense, which means if TSM are allowed to fall back, they'll be in a great spot. A run out from Achieve will get Hot and Cold. That's a beautiful one there, as it was prepped, expecting Hotton to be on that rappel. That's a good read.
Another will come in this time from Merc, as finally DarkZero finds themselves on the board. They take out Merc, as we'd noted. Stacking up for a push on in, but nobody watches the corner. There's GOS and G out. He'll pull out the shotgun and look for a closer engagement. He won't find it, though, as his teammate Ebola is able to get in on some fun as well. Unable to control the recoil is Skies. He'll back all the way up and just watch the stairs. This is going to be a tough prospect for him to get back in this with 40 seconds to go, though it's still definitely winnable for a team that might not exert as much patience and pressure as TSM does. They just need to wait, and they can even give up a frag and still keep this going. But not a ton of time for Skies to just very quietly crouch his way in towards the site. He sees Bolo around the corner, but the long range is not good enough. They'll be finished off by TSM. They'll regain the lead after round number 5.
So the result of that round is pretty obviously thanks to TSM having more information than DarkZero. I think we all kind of saw it in the way that DZ were trying to clear their way in. A lot of engagements where TSM's just, somebody's sitting in a corner and someone from DarkZero walks on by that TSM member in that corner and free kill for TSM. It's not the only thing, though. I mean, that run out from the Jaeger, that's another situation that could have been monitored from DarkZero had they more information to work with. And you can't really blame DZ on the one hand, because that Mute Mozzie combo, obviously, it's always going to be a prevalent force that DZ has to butt up against. It's not just that either. There's also the, Merc, for example. He was just running around shooting drones. And, he's not the only one on TSM. So DZ trying to go for very spread out attacks that require an abundance of information, not having enough of that information, and then faltering when they get into a confrontation, because the confrontation is almost always one-sided. Almost always TSM having the info that they need, thanks to the Pulse or the Valkyrie, as it was last round, and DZ just not having access to that information. We've always talked about how it's an information game, and, it's always been one of the most important things, but it's the clear lack of it for DZ right now is pretty obvious.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
Of course, we said the same thing in the EG TSM game, right? Or at least we speculated the same with EG.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? I didn't?
No. I was going to say I absolutely think it was the same thing.
I didn't say that. Don't put me in with this.
No, this is the meta we're looking at right now. I mean, it's soft destruction is priority for the attack, and we've seen that through both of our 2 matches in North America today. And the reason it's priority is because of things like Castle and Goyo, and those 2 operators have been played a lot on defense. Because those soft destruction operators are such priority, you lose out on other pieces of utility. And with Mute Mozzie added to it, I mean, it's really hard. Look at it. Mint can't drone that. What's he supposed to do? Well, they have to wait till they shoot the Mute Jammer. It's going to take an extra 15, 20 seconds.
See, one thing they could do, and we talked about this before, is you can either bait out the pest, or you can use one of Zophia's explosives to just blow up the barbed wire and hope you get the Mute Jammer or the pest on the other side of it, but it's fruitless. It's totally fruitless. And there you see it. The drone is gone. You've wasted a minute now of DZ's time. They really haven't been able to do all that much. Meanwhile, TSM has taken the down below. They've got both Bolo as well as Pojo Man down there, possibly 2 Nitro cells in hand, waiting for the call to be made from Bolo so that Pojo Man can blow them sky high. And this could be the death of the round for DarkZero right now, and it's totally unbeknownst to them.
The crazy thing about this is that TSM's waiting patiently. They're like, oh, we got the setup, we're ready. But it's the time being wasted, like you talked about. It's DZ. They're trying their best to get into this, but it's really difficult for them because of that information deficiency. Eclipse will eat a little bit of damage, but meanwhile, Hyper will take down Merc. So man advantage for DZ. They, I guess, don't need that much information to start putting up the frags. Achieve lands his C4 onto Hyper. That was not the one we saw Pojo Man prep for, but it was a C4 regardless. And a good one at that. Hyper, player who had managed to get the kill earlier for DZ.
We'll just tear up the floor even more as Skies holds an angle down below. Not going to see anybody, but down go two of those Goyo shields, blown to pieces, and with it, that area denial will deny the defenders the ability from sitting down as safe as they want to be. Still more of this floor being taken away. It's the roof and the protection for the defenders, and they're going to miss it dearly as Skies uses all of his skeleton key and will now look to drop. Interestingly enough, Sky still has both of his frag grenades. That's some significant damage that can be done on these defenders. As both these teams are in a 4v4, Skies decides not to drop. He's still up top, surveying the holes that he's made and the work that he's done as Pojo Man finally lets rip on that C4. Both teams are going to trade one out, another from Pojo Man. Lots of damage from TSM, and they dominate the kill feed in the final second as DarkZero, their own undoing, being that clock, just a little too lethargic on the push, and TSM takes every bit of advantage of it that they can. That's the first half in the books. We'll swap sides with TSM up 4-2, but it's a defender-sided victory for a Villa defense. Color me surprised.
Here's the thing, Parker, and as we've repeated over and over again, that lethargy was enforced by the lack of information for the attack. And it's so apparent by the way that they're playing. DarkZero now, luckily, not on the attacking side, so they don't have to deal with that anymore. They're going to go over to defense, and they now have the advantage side. Of course, this is Villa, a defender-sided map, so keep that in mind. TSM taking 4 out of the possible 6 for the first half. That's a solid defensive half for TSM. It puts them in a good position, but it's not an outright win. We can absolutely see DZ put up 5 or their own 4 rounds in this second half. Maybe bring it to a draw. We'll see what happens, of course, but I do also want to take note of the fact that that could have been a flawless half for TSM. Both of the rounds that DZ won, if you recall, that was that first round where DZ, or Hyper specifically, managed to get a triple kill, basically for free. And then we also saw the round where TSM was up 4-2, started peeking unnecessarily while defending in Trophy, and then lost the round because, well, they kind of handed it to DZ. So, some mistakes being made from TSM. This could be a 6-0 right now.
You'd love to see those style of deals where 1 or 2 kills can totally change everything when it comes to this. We've seen matches where it's a 5-1 and it could very easily be a 3-3, for example, and I think it just speaks to how close these teams can be. DarkZero still did, I would say, a very extraordinary job with the fact that they had to push late with limited intel and yet still kept it close on a number of those rounds, and that's kudos to them. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, though, on a couple of those rounds, because if you look at it, well, right now, they're on defense, so they're going to be in a very strong position over the next, X amount of rounds that are needed.
Yeah, they now have that advantage, and they can work it probably the same way that TSM worked it, to be honest. I mean, we do see the Mute and Mozzie combo coming out again. There is no Goyo, and there is no Castle, so that extra layer for DZ is not there. That's a lot of damage just incurred from Achieved. An angle opened up underneath the window. And already an early advantage for DZ.
Back on the drone work here. We've actually seen some pretty good drone work, and for whatever reason, DarkZero, with the Mute and the Mozzie in play, they've allowed TSM to drone out a lot more than I think DarkZero was ever allowed to do when they were on attack. So I'm not entirely sure if that's just a different strategy. Maybe their work has been done elsewhere, so that maybe TSM can't enter through certain areas, but TSM right now is very close to being able to get inside of the site, and their entry will be heralded by a logic bomb called in by the Dokkaebi that's in the hands of Geo.
Ooh, that logic bomb netting a kill. Merc gets Eclipse. Beautiful coordination for TSM. They want to entry into the site. Nice shots being landed here. Geo will get mint as well. Lots of damage done to Skies, but he's still got his gas canisters in hand, and he can still hold onto the site, despite incurring so much damage from Bolo. Ojo gonna drop down and try and support the take from below. Achieved on low HP, but he can still do some work. About the same as Skies. Just a little bit of a stall out here, but it's not gonna matter. There's still enough time for TSM to make an execution happen, and they want it to be perfect position, perfect timing, so they're waiting for everyone to get in position for that. Here comes the gas canisters and the stuns. The push-in is stopped by Hot and Cold. Merc goes down. DZ fighting back. Push in from West Hall, not stopped though. Geo's all the way in, and he gets a beautiful shot into Skies. The last defender is Hyper. He needs to deny this plant. He will win out against Achieved. He has no C4 though. He brought barbed wire. He has to deny it using his gun. Pushing in, seeing the enemy at billiards, not landing the shots. Geo's still about full HP. Hyper has to now fight against a crossfire. The rotation to 90 from Geo. This is going to be unexpected, and there's the kill. Geo, the final one. TSM take their first attacking round.
I don't know if DarkZero was aware of the fact that there was an entry from the attackers into Vault, but it was played very perfectly by TSM. You still had Pojo camping that diffuser as it went down, and the objective play from TSM is about as good as you could hope. This has really been a very similar story to when we saw Clubhouse. TSM are holding most of the important stats. They have more opening duels won. They're getting the objective play done quite successfully. They're capitalizing on their 1v2vx's, and they're being able to clutch in the final couple seconds of a round. And it must be very frustrating if you're DarkZero, because by most measures, DarkZero is doing a lot of things very right. Their comms seem to be quite good. They don't look like they're that confused. When they were on attack, DarkZero was, fighting an uphill battle against the meta right now, which is just simply not having any information. And now on defense, I think DarkZero did an okay job in that round. But TSM are just so formidable when it comes to getting a pick and just going from there. And they are always a team that is, you mentioned on the post plant how there was a crossfire established from Geo and Pojo. I feel like TSM do an exceptional job of trading out. Very similar to the way that we used to see from the old G2 squad, where they had that, never be 5 seconds away from each other kind of deal. I see TSM doing very similar things here. And it's hard if you're DarkZero, if you're going to have somebody like Hyper, if you're going to have somebody like Skies play off on their own, because TSM is going to be able to read into that and play it very perfectly. So at worst, the damage that's going to be done is one person before it gets removed. And
whoa,
I don't really know what happened there, but say goodbye to Achieved.
He ran out from the basement door. We're in the parking garage. He ran out from the door, and it's such an unexpected run out that, well, yeah, Achieved, well, he didn't anticipate that. So, I mean, I can't blame Achieved necessarily. He should check for all runouts. But that was a very aggressive play from Hyper that could have cost him his life. Risky, but he made it work. So, congrats to him. Looks like it's going to be a top clear here for TSM. They're one man down, though. And, of course, it's going to be your buck. Of course, when you're going for vertical control, it's got to be the buck. That's the operator that you lose.
Yeah, that's very damning for TSM. Especially if you look at DarkZero's lineup, Michael. There's no Jaeger and there's no Wamai. So those frag grenades from Achieved could have done an extensive amount of damage. Dokkaebi doesn't have access to frags anymore, so she's right back where she started. So you don't have any real destructive ability, and that could prove to be very problematic for TSM. But okay, Bolo's just in, and he somehow loses it to Mint. My goodness! Phone calls ringing, and Mint wins that one out with about 50 HP traded. Bolo probably should have had that kill, but I don't think he was expecting somebody playing inside of that angle. DarkZero now with a 2-man advantage.
Definitely an odd spot, I guess, to see Minton, but at the same time, yeah, that really does fall on the shoulders of Bolo, and he's got to be kicking himself for that one. TSM, well, yeah, 2-man disadvantage for them. They can work it back, though. Merc using these angles established from above to try and find a player inside the kitchen. Now, that's going to be opened up closer to Mint, but not actually on him. There's nothing to find here for Merc. It looks like he's just trying to cut off rotation at this point because he's just not seeing anything. Mint's position can be opened up above, but there's no soft destruction to do that with. As both of the Ash charges from Merc have been used, Hojo Man can't even use his there. There aren't choices for TSM when it comes to vertical pressure, and they're even being retaken on by Skies from above. There's an easy one for Skies as Merc walks into it. He does get traded off, but still, damage done.
This is a huge lead now for DarkZero as Geo and Pojo Man find themselves in another clutch position, but this time with the numbers very much against them, and the time even worse. As they'll tear down that doorway and they'll both scamper off. They'll hit it from the kitchen, but Mint is still positioned down on the floor. And it's Hot and Cold and Hyper to be able to clean on up. Very well played. And actually, it looked like Mint had died at the very final seconds there, if I'm correct. But DarkZero desperately needed that, because if not, you find TSM winning 6 of the last 7 rounds and putting it on match point. That's a very tough spot to find yourself in if you're DarkZero, and really challenging on Villa to be able to come back from. Mind you, it is a defense on Villa for DarkZero for the rest of this, so DarkZero should be able to close some of these rounds out just by virtue of the way that this map plays. Still, a successful kitchen defense will mean that DarkZero now has to go to a site they haven't won. They're going to go to the only other site they played, which is Aviator and Games. And very similar to what happened with DarkZero on attack, TSM fell victim to the Mute Jammers and the Pests, etc. Of course, the spawn peak from Hyper didn't really hurt either.
Yeah, that was a really great start.
Attackers need to locate.
It didn't hurt. It could have hurt, though. It is a huge risk. Aviator being the next bomb site here. DZ not seeing success here yet. But, I don't know. The way that TSM took their first attack onto Aviator, you, I think, explained it very well. They got that opening kill, and then they just snowballed off of it. Didn't let that lead slip away at any point. I don't know if that's going to be allowed by DZ this time around. You could definitely expect them to be playing differently than the first time they had defended this site to try and mitigate that issue. Probably, if they're going to roam, DZ will have a double-up roam, or they'll have players close enough to each other where they can support constantly. So there's never a moment where they find themselves in a disadvantage in an engagement, or at least able to trade out. It looks like they're going that back up on the roaming quite heavily. He doesn't know that. We do. But yeah, there you go.
So, limited action in comparison to the previous round, 30 seconds on in. Give or take, of course. And that drone work is quite successful. The Mute has been spotted in that position, and it's actually Hot and Cold in the dock who gets taken out by Bolo. They've actually seen 2 targets in that one area. Well played. Could have possibly capitalized on the Mute as well, but Eclipse is not in the line of sight. Some more shots coming in from the members of TSM as they are over towards the Master side. They're split up right now, but they're both attacking from a very similar angle. At this point, TSM understands that they have full control of Master and its surrounding area. They'll take Astro now with it as well, as Achieved opens up that wall. And then they'll go on to Drone. Nobody's really fearing a C4 from below. That's not really the way that we see Aviator played right now, though there is one member on the bottom floor. It appears to be the Jaeger of Hyper, who's caught in a rotate. He might be able to continue on and get back to the site with nobody really spotting him.
Well, that's going to be very important, as DZ are at that man disadvantage. If Hyper can persist, maybe take control of Study to stop this B push that you can see TSM setting up for. That'd be really helpful to his team. Pojoman is going to be flanking Study, though, at some point. You can see him going on Repel right now. He's going to get that control and start applying that pincer pressure that TSM seeks to apply when executing on this bomb site. DZ still has utility, though. They still got gas canisters. They've still got, well, probably still have C4. And that's going to allow them to stop a plant inside of B when it starts coming out from TSM. So TSM is relying heavily on getting a pick here on the entry to make this take just a little bit easier. If Gio can get this for free, that'd be pretty big. But he knows it's a risk to try and go for that hacked cam, because he could be wide swung on and lose his life just like that.
It's a very patient round right now from TSM, as they're not over-committing to the push. They'll head towards 90, and Bolo in particular launching off a stun. He'll only find himself and nobody else, so not exactly what he wanted. There goes another stun and an explosive down towards what appears to be a Goyo shield. Merc has been down, so both teams are now in essentially a 4v4. He gets finished off by Eclipse. Achieved is there. Pojoman as well. The cross from the Hibana as DarkZero will trail, and match point looking exceedingly likely. Gio just a couple seconds off, and he doesn't even need to get that diffuser down. Not sure if he did, but Achieved and Pojoman clean up, and that's 1 point for TSM. They cannot finish worse than first. Now, today, we'll see if DarkZero will be able to catch up in terms of points, but DZ at best will get a draw.
All right, so TSM continuing, it seems, to be DarkZero's kryptonite. we've seen DZ run roughshot over pretty much every team in North America through that first half. Not everybody, of course, but not losing to anyone at least. And the last half, it was TSM who they just couldn't deal with. And it seems to be the same story in the second half. It seems like TSM has DZ's number. With a lot of these executions, the reads on TSM are just coming out perfectly. For example, in that last round, DarkZero, they started springing into action in the last 20 seconds, started relocating, repositioning, started setting up in places that, well, I mean, they weren't. All those safety spots that DZ had, well, they abandoned them. They started trying to make plays in the last 20 seconds. And now there's a couple reasons why that could be. Most likely is that they expect TSM to also be repositioning, to also start assaulting the site, and DZ's trying to get into the best position possible to stop that, to rebuff that. But TSM is waiting just like 5-10 more seconds than most teams usually would on an execution, and they're catching DZ in those rotations. They're catching DZ in DZ's proactive counterplay. So, I mean, that's just a good read from TSM. First and foremost, and DarkZero haven't really seemed to catch on to that just yet. There's also, of course, the fact that TSM, mostly without fail, have managed to get the lead-off kill in many of these rounds. On the attacking side, they've been pretty spot on in getting those entries.
Yeah, they're double the opening frags that we've seen from DarkZero so far, which goes an awful long way. Not every single matchup you need to have that opening pick, and sometimes the opening duel can be quite deceptive. If you win the opening duel with 2 minutes left to go, that's a totally different ballgame than if you get the opening duel when there's 20 seconds left on the clock and everybody is essentially dying at the same time. So it's not always something that we keep track of, but we do keep track of when the teams get that opening frag. So far, I like the way you put that. DarkZero's getting caught by being proactive, and I was going to ask, from my vantage point, it's just DarkZero committing to their system, but TSM understanding the crosses on this map a little bit better. And given the record that both of these teams have on Villa, you'd expect DarkZero to maybe be a little bit cleaner if they're not being forced out of position by TSM.
I completely agree with your assessment. I think it has to do with the system, like you said, and also, yes, it's partially the better understanding of the angles for TSM for me. But it's also a better understanding of DarkZero themselves. Because that little extra layer of patience, TSM does not always display that with every team. They certainly do with DarkZero. And it's working out great for them. Now, it's not over yet. We do know that TSM gets 1 point, at minimum. And as you said, that means they, at worst, can finish first in North America. At best, first in North America. But it's not necessarily a guaranteed win yet. If TSM does get this win, though, you can rest assured they're going to launch themselves way further ahead of North America, further ahead than they already are, because DarkZero is their closest competitor. And when you take your closest competitor down in a win, no less, that's quite substantial. That is going to, I mean, almost guarantee first, or at least a win. Gets eclipsed as he attempts to break the castle barricade. I mean, he gets the castle barricade, but he loses his life. Hyper will follow it up, though, so there goes Merc. Don't even exchange. We're getting pretty low on time in this round. The attack has to speed things up.
Skies is taking a lot of damage as well. Logic bombs going off just to give the location of DarkZero out in case you want things to get any worse for them. Across through the smoke, and there is Hyper taken down by Bolo, but he misses almost all of his shots. Down he goes, and Mint will win that duel with Hot and Cold there to take out Pojerman as well. Diffuser is down, though, so this is going to get really challenging for DarkZero to retake, though they do have an advantage. Achieved is on the flank. He's on the hunt. He's coming on down. He sees some bullets getting fired on in. Nobody counter-diffusing from DarkZero. Nobody disabling. There goes Hot and Cold. And you'll need to get somebody on over there. You got to hurry if you're Geo. He sees him. Easy frag, and Geo is out as quickly as he can. He's got 15 seconds left to go. It's a 7-second timer. They'll have to double up on Geo. Nobody from DarkZero is getting it. Only 3 seconds left. There goes Mint, trying to get through and make some noise. You gotta hurry, Geo, but you're gonna get spotted. DarkZero, beautifully well played. It's the one dig from Skies, and DarkZero will hang on 4 now. No opportunity for TSM to put this one away, not yet. They've still got 2 more rounds. A miraculous comeback from DarkZero in the final seconds.
Yeah, that was very close. A great understanding of the situation from Skies displayed. You got to be impressed by his ability to cover his teammate. Now, of course, we did see very low HP on Geo. To be fair to him, he would have died to that deagle in one shot, and he did. So, that's a lot of pressure to be putting on him. Meanwhile, Achieve dying upstairs, unfortunate to say the least. Could have done a lot more work from up there, but it happens. TSM are still well and truly in that driver's seat. So they're not out of this, but DZ's saying that they really, really want that 1 point. That was a close round, to be sure. I like the way that DZ managed to retake their site. I also like the way that TSM managed to distract, allowing for the site to take. You can see that they were very spread out in their execution. Part of their attack was still upstairs, and then the rest of it was just going in through a living room plant. So that was an understanding from TSM that, oh, hey, nobody covering a living room. Let's just go for it. They went in, got that plant, and then in the post plant, things were looking pretty dandy, to be honest. But because they lost their planter, they lost their top floor hold, TSM really all put the pressure on Geo as an individual with very little HP to hold that in the post. It's too much pressure for one guy with that much HP.
Especially with the kit that we see Dokkaebi having. You got a C75 or you got the DMR, and that's really it. If you miss a couple shots on close range of that C75, it's challenging for you to hit the rest of it, so not exactly who you want to find in that position. Achieved got caught out, and that was played very well from DarkZero onto the stairs, too, as Achieved got baited into firing and giving his position away. As it certainly appeared like DarkZero was actually intending for a retake strategy on that one, and they did so quite well. Yeah. Castle Barricade, if it hadn't been there, by the way, almost assuredly gives Geo the opportunity to rotate, and with it, they could have done some significant damage. Now, here's a rush that's coming on in, but the Guzmat mine from Hyper has alerted DZ to the play from TSM. They'll gun down Merc, and with it, so will the fortunes of TSM fall, but it's a very quick set of action. We're not even a minute in yet. 3 people are dead, 2 of which happen to be on TSM's side of things. Eclipse has traded his life for both Merc and Pojo Man. Bolo will catch out Skies as he'd been isolated, and Logic Bomb had given the position away of the Mozzie, so we're back to a 3v3. But for TSM, the more damning part here is that you've lost your hard breacher. On Villa, that's not ideal. A narrow miss onto the Ella of Hyper as he's running through the kitchen, and we're still over half of the round to go, and nothing big has really happened. Pummeled is Hyper, as everybody's dying all together. More damage that's being done to the Buck of Achieved as he will back off, and springing on in with the C75 in hand. Michael, I'm just going to take this one because it seems they're hell-bent on finishing this one up, and no opportunity for me to give it back over to you unless you'd like to take it from here with Hot and Cold in a 1v3.
I mean, I may as well. Hotten's got a mountain to climb, that's for sure. TSM have full control of kitchen, and Hotten is going to have to stop that plant when it eventually comes out, but he's actually, I think he has the diffuser. I can't be sure, but it looks like the diffuser is down by Hot and Cold, and that's why this plant's not happening. Yes, indeed, he does. So Hotten knows he can hold this with the C4, but he springs that way too early. He's going to have to hold 2 angles now just with his gun and his skill. If there's anyone who's going to do it, it's Hotten, but there's a 3rd angle introduced by Achieved, and TSM will take the map. Congratulations to them, and GG's come out in the chat. That's the first win for any team in this second half for North America.
Excellently done by TSM, and we could see from above how well coordinated that was for all 3 of them to go in together in unison. How many times have we seen a team in a 1v3 throw it by pushing individually? But instead, TSM, extremely methodical, all working together, and unfortunately for old